Alex and Dave.
Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on basketball, alongside my other co-host, Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
Bro, it's going good. Somehow it is both a great day and a sad day, man. The NBA finals are over. Shout out to the Denver Nuggets for hoisting up the championship trophy, but it also means that it is the end of the 2023 NBA season.
Yes, it's a sad day, but also a happy day. The Denver Nuggets win their first ever NBA championship in franchise history, which is great. But no more NBA basketball, which is absolutely unfortunate. But that doesn't mean this podcast is gonna stop, man. We're gonna keep going throughout the entire summer, the entire offseason, giving you great content left, right, and center. And we're gonna be doing a lot of recapping of the season, probably this week and also next week as well. So be on the lookout for that. Just know that there's content coming out of the wazoo. So just like be ready for that. And we're gonna start off today basically talking all NBA finals with a few other things thrown in there. But it's gonna be a heavy NBA finals episode. So hope you guys enjoy. But before we start today's episode, we do have to plug our socials. Remember to follow our personal TikToks and Instagram. Our link trees, TV on basketball at the Knockdown J will be found in the descriptions below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, again, follow the TikTok and Instagram for the best daily NBA content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review if you're on any of the podcast networks, Spotify or Apple. And if you're on YouTube, remember to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. Jay, with all that stuff out the way, are you ready to talk NBA Finals?
Yes, sir. Let's get into it, man.
Let's get into it. And like we mentioned off the top, the Denver Nuggets defeat the Miami Heat in Game 5, winning 94-89 to complete the 4-1 win, winning in 5 games. Nikola Jokic, Finals MVP. There was no doubt in anyone's mind that it was going to be anyone else. Jay, your whole thoughts on the Nuggets winning the championship and just your like immediate thoughts after these finals.
Bro, I mean, I've been pretty confident in terms of the Nuggets coming into these NBA finals from the very beginning. I told you I picked the Nuggets in 6. It was really out of respect for the Miami Heat, but I told you I wanted to pick Nuggets in 5. I just felt like the Miami Heat had came too far and played too hard, and honestly played too well to be taken out sooner. But I think I think we both discussed this pretty heavily after Game 2. More specifically, was when me and you kind of came to the conclusion that it was like I don't see anything that makes the Miami Heat better than the Denver Nuggets. Like even with the Miami Heat winning game 2, they didn't show us anything that felt like, oh, this is sustainable enough to really take the Denver Nuggets out, right? You hit 17 out of 35 threes. Yeah, it looks good, but it's something that most teams in the NBA, if you're going to hit 50% or near 50% of your threes on that high of a volume, most of the time you're going to win the game. And funny enough, they went in game 3 and did a similar feat and it didn't work out for them, right?
Yeah.
So even then, it wasn't translatable. Shout out to the guy Jeff that I work with at the store that I work at. There we were having a conversation about the Nuggets, and after game 2, he was like, the series is tied up 1-1. You still feel confident about the Nuggets? I was like, yeah. He was like, even with the game 2 looking the way it was, I was like, bro, the Heat gotta show me something. He was like, bro, they just won game 2. I said, yeah, and they did something that doesn't seem sustainable against a Denver Nuggets team that's playing this well. And it played out pretty much to a T like that. The Nuggets basically looked like the better team the entire series. This series, honestly, if it were not for that hot shooting night in game 2, they honestly probably could have swept this team, if we're being real. That's just how good the Nuggets were. That's just how good the Nuggets are. And TV, I'm gonna keep saying this. We said it. We were talking about this actually off pod right before we started recording, and I'm gonna keep saying it every recording because I think by saying it, we can start to maybe drill it in our heads and start to really come to this realization that, dude, maybe the Denver Nuggets were this caliber of team the whole time,
Yeah.
and we just didn't want to face the music, bro. I really do think that that's something we have to continue to revisit throughout this offseason, looking at the pathway in which the Nuggets were able to build this squad off of development internally, grabbing big time players at key positions like KCP and Bruce Brown, big time players. Even Christian Brown, who they drafted out of Kansas, big time player who just knows how to play winning basketball. They say he won 3 straight high school championships. Then he won the national championship in college with Kansas. And then his first year in the NBA, he wins the NBA championship. He's just a guy who makes winning plays. And that was a big thing in game 4 with his 15 points, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is just a team that is just simply a lot better than I think even the film tells us sometimes. And I think now that they've won the championship and they give us a little bit of a blueprint again, because you know the league is a copycat league. There's a new blueprint for what winning basketball looks like. And ironically enough, despite the fact that this Denver team could get a little expensive down the road, there's a lot of sustainability in some of the things that they were able to put together on this squad. So I mean, this team is real.
This team was 100% real. And like you mentioned, there were times where the Miami Heat did show something, but compared to the other teams the Miami Heat have faced, the Nuggets were just not going to beat themselves.
Yeah.
That's the difference between like this team and maybe the Milwaukee Bucks team. Yes, they had a better record, but they were like not as disciplined. They weren't as focused as the Nuggets team. Same thing with the Boston Celtics. This Nuggets team from game 1 all the way to game 5 for like I would say 95% of the minutes showed why they were the better team. And it's not just because Nikola Jokic. I mean, we're going to talk about Nikola Jokic enough for this. I mean, there's not enough. Honestly, there's not enough words to say how great this man is.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, this Denver Nuggets team, top to bottom, we talked about before the series, the battle of the role players, killed that battle. The second and third stars killed that battle. The star players killed that battle. Top to bottom, this Nuggets team was just that good. And even though they kept proving us more and more throughout the series, like, oh, maybe we shouldn't doubt them. There's always that little bit of doubt because you're near the finish line, you're not close to it. But at the end of the day, no doubt whatsoever. Even after game 3, especially after game 4, where the Nuggets, obviously the Jamal Murray struggles from the field, Nikola Jokic injured ankle, foul trouble early in the game. This team had every reason to lie down, being up, being like in that comfortable position, saying, you know what, this maybe isn't our night. It's time to pack it up. Maybe we can like move on. The Heat were trying to bounce back, but this freaking Nuggets team, they always find ways. Whether it's through those 2 guys, or maybe it's a freaking 21-point performance from Bruce Brown or a 27-point performance from Aaron Gordon. All of these guys knew their role. They stepped up when they absolutely needed to, and they were just able to pull through. That defense that people were talking about that was going to be a struggle, no problem whatsoever. Nikola Jokic being put in pick and rolls, no problem whatsoever. Like, this is like all these like little doubts. You tried to pick like little holes in this Nuggets team where maybe like you could see the Heat like completely exploiting, but man, they just couldn't. And they tried, and trust me, they tried. Eric Spoelstra went through like 4 or 5 different types of zones I've seen in this series. They went through man to man. They were trying like all these sort of lineups. Let's freaking put like this like 1-3-1 zone, which I swear was only a thing in 2K, but I seen it finally seen it IRL. I think it was like game 3 or something. I'm like, are they running a 1-3-1 zone? Ain't no way. They're trying everything in the bag. But man, this Nuggets team, even through all of those adjustments that he'd have, they were able to counter and they were able to win this championship, man. And you just honestly, for a team first time in franchise history doing it on their home court, this is the type of stuff you just love to see.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing too is I think we just have to acknowledge some of the hardships that this Denver Nuggets team has had to go through, right? I think everybody wants to talk about the unconventional pathway in which the Nuggets went because everybody wants to talk about how low the seeds they defeated were, right? But I think that's not fair because if you look at a lot of the series that they were going into, I think we have to contextualize it more by the people they beat, right? They beat KD and Devin Booker. They beat LeBron James and Anthony Davis. They beat a Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo led team, right? Granted, I know the Minnesota Timberwolves series was a little dicey, but in terms of that being one of those where like they were probably favored by many in that series, and even though things were a smidgen interesting, they pretty much controlled that series front to back.
Yeah.
But it's not you can do the seeding thing all you want to, but let's not forget that for almost a week and a half, TV pundits were going around pumping their chest out saying that the Lakers were going to the NBA Finals. Let's not forget that. Then so why is it that now that the Denver Nuggets have surpassed that, the Denver Nuggets have outplayed that, dominated throughout the postseason? Oh, it's you took down the lowly Lakers. But you had them going to the NBA Finals, but right before this series started. So even I would even say the Denver Nuggets versus Phoenix Suns series. Remember when we had picked that series? I told you my biggest thing was if there was any team that I think could go blow for blow offensively with a team as juggernaut heavy in terms of being able to put the ball in the basket like Denver can, it would be a Phoenix team that has Kevin Durant and Devin Booker on it. And guess what? In a series where they needed to be big time offense, where we thought offense was going to be the big time decision maker, Denver came out and really guarded up, and it mattered throughout the entirety of that series. And that ended up being a defining action in this run, was that their defense actually spoke just as much volumes throughout this entire postseason run as their offense did. We were all looking at how high their high octane offense was, and this, that, and the third. Dude, this Denver Nuggets team had like one of the worst 3-point volume percentages in NBA Finals history.
Yeah.
And still won the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is a team that, despite being associated with high octane offense, they got a lot of this job done by being sound defensively and having an otherworldly player, which I think is both a good strategy and also one that may not be duplicable. It's kind of tough. Kind of tough.
It is. And I'm going to piggyback off that point. We are not doing anything to minimize this Denver Nuggets championship at all. Nothing. We are not doing that just because it wasn't the competitive finals that you want. It wasn't the TV darlings that the NBA media or just TV media in general want to put out there. Mm-hmm. The Denver Nuggets did their job, and they did it comfortably.
Yeah.
In the last 20 years, in the last 25 years, there have been 3 teams that have won a championship and not had to face an elimination game. The 97 Bulls, the 2017 Golden State Warriors, and the 2023 Denver Nuggets. They did their business, and they made sure that they weren't in a position where their backs were against the wall. They did, like, if you think about it, this was a pretty dominating fight, like a playoff run. No one really wants to talk about it just because, especially in that Lakers series, it wasn't like, yes, it was a sweep, but it was like a lot of close games. And of course, the TV pundits, instead of like giving the Nuggets the credit, they're like, "Oh, is the Lakers the best team that got swept ever?" Oh, get out of here. They took care of business, and all those like little worries that we had, the defense, the 3-point shooting, the way to develop offense again, like that past Nikola Jokic, they proved all of that wrong, and it was a full team effort. They deserve all the flowers, and again, like I mentioned, we're not taking anything away because they fully deserve this. The city of Denver deserves this very well-earned championship. But Jay, we got to look at the man. We have to look at the man of the hour. We got to take a look at Nikola Jokic, man.
Yeah.
We discussed it before the show. First player in NBA history to lead a team, to lead the playoffs in points, rebounds, and assists. Not just his team, the whole entire league in terms of playoffs. It's ridiculous how good Nikola Jokic is. And just like guys of the past, like the Dirk Nowitzki, like the Giannis Antetokounmpo, after you win that first championship, it elevates you to a status where you are talked amongst the all-time greats.
Right.
Jay, we're going to start this debate now. I know he just won a championship, but where would you put Jokic in the all-time rankings? This, after winning these 2 MVPs, this Finals MVP, all this stuff, where would you have him?
I think the main thing that we have to contextualize is honestly where we've seen the last handful of Finals MVPs get slotted once this conversation really starts, right? Mm-hmm. Excuse me, last season, Steph Curry won Finals MVP, his 4th championship, and we started having the conversation of, is Steph Curry now the best point guard in the league above a Magic Johnson, right? We look at how much that elevated him by winning yet another championship and doing it in the fashion in which he did. I remember when Giannis Antetokounmpo won his championship, Granted, again, this is a guy with a ton of accolades. He has a DPOY. He has a Most Improved Player. Obviously, he has 2 MVPs and now a Finals MVP as well. And when he won that Finals against the Phoenix Suns, the conversation was, is this a guy that now should be considered in like the top 20, top 25 all time already, right? And I think if we're going to do that with these caliber of guys, then I think that Nikola Jokic is somewhere ranked between top 25, no lower than 30 already this point in this portion of his career. I think he is already a guy with 2 MVPs, most, including my, or I'll say some, including myself, would argue should have been 3 times straight MVPs, which would really elevate him within this conversation. A number 1 overall seed in a year where they were able to run the table throughout the entirety of the Western Conference. They lost 4 games in the Western Conference run, in terms of how they were able to dominate throughout the entirety of the postseason. And then when they got to the finals, that was the first time they had ever lost a home game throughout the entirety of the postseason run, right?
Yeah.
So you look at the circumstances of how they were able to run the table, dating all the way back to the beginning of the regular season. You could make a weird argument that this was sneakily one of the most dominant years for a team on the way to a championship run. It's just been within the framework of how much parity has started to formulate around the league that it doesn't feel as impactful as we've seen it in years past. I think Nikola Jokic, with what he's done statistically so far in his career, with still so much ahead of him, if we're projecting out about, I think me and you were talking about this before the podcast, how his game will translate long term. This is a guy who could be a very effective player for a long time, and could probably still be your best player on a championship caliber team for at the least maybe the next 4-5 seasons.
At the very least,
There's a lot ahead, so I'm gonna say he caps out. I can't put him above the top 20, but I think to me, I think he's somewhere between 20 and 25, and I think anybody who puts him lower than 30 is sleeping.
100%, man. I mean, this not only I mentioned the stats already. It's absolutely ridiculous. But the run he had, the way that he was able to navigate his way through his entire playoffs, puts him on a pedestal that very few players have. We have seen very few players do. The Giannis's, the Dirk Nowitzki's, all that type of stuff. And man, this one championship. I mean, we all say that everyone who wins a championship deserves it, all this and that. Depending on the player, championships just hold some sort of different weight, right? If you really think about it, winning a championship at the end of your career, a la a Gary Payton or something like that, yes, you won a championship, but it doesn't hold as much weight. Maybe it's a bad example, but at the end of the day, someone like Nikola Jokic who was able to be the number 1 guy, take you all the way here, almost average a freaking triple-double in the entire playoffs, right. Triple-double throughout the entire season. So if you combine both, he basically averaged a triple-double sort of season, almost won MVP this year, runner-up. And the way he's been able to dominate the league the last few years, he basically embodies the Denver Nuggets. For the last few years, we've been saying, Nikola Jokic, 2-time MVP, yeah, but is he a playoff performer, this and that? It was an unfair argument because where was Michael Porter Jr. when they his injury was going on? Jamal Murray. Nikola Jokic was the same as the Denver Nuggets, always was left out of certain conversations, especially for best player in the league, because there was always that doubt if he was a winning basketball player. He gets his guys back. They won a championship the first time he has everyone back. So that's really what it comes down to. And he was able to still be that guy and do everything that we've seen him do during his MVP run. So at this point, I said a hot take before the show, and I'm going to bring it on to here. I think someone like Nikola Jokic, we could put him over someone like Dwayne Wade all time. Freaking Dwayne Wade. Yeah, Dwayne Wade has 3 NBA championships. Yes, Dwayne Wade is a 13-time NBA All-Star, 8-time All-NBA. But if you really think about it, Dwayne Wade, unfortunately, this is the problem with having Kobe and LeBron in your same era. but was never really discussed in the best player of the year, or the best player in the league sort of debate. Was never an MVP, and even though he again won 3 NBA championships, he was never really the number one guy on any of those teams. He had Shaq in his 2006 run. Yes, he was still the best player, but it was still Shaquille O'Neal. You had LeBron and Chris Bosh in your other two championship years. And of course, the end of the career was kind of iffy for Dwayne Wade as well. We cannot ignore that. But when you look at Nikola Jokic, especially in his early career, yes, a lot less All-Star appearances, a lot less All-NBA appearances. But the two-time MVPs in like such dominating fashion, and then the way that he was able to lead his team with no NBA All-Stars on his like roster holds more weight, man. And I think that it's a conversation some people might not want to have, but man, Nikola Jokic, I think he's a lock for top 25 all time at this point. He's an absolute lock, and even he's ahead of someone like Dwayne Wade.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this off camera. I think as bold of a take as that might sound when you say it out loud, you think about prime Dwayne Wade, the Flash, right? You think about the circumstances in which he was able to win a championship in his early portion of his career. He was a guy who was able to assert himself as one of the top guards in the NBA. I will agree with you. I don't think Dwayne Wade was ever discussed as the best player in the league in any given season, the way Nikola Jokic has. And Nikola Jokic has been able to do that in multiple seasons, which I also think is important in terms of context. I think the main thing that I would say to Dwayne Wade supporters in a conversation or an argument like this one would be, you have to factor in the entire body of work. And now, of course, Nikola Jokic has a ton of time left to go as well. But Dwayne Wade had an awkward stint in Cleveland. I was joking with TV beforehand. One of the nastiest Chicago Bulls teams I've ever seen was Dwayne Wade, Jimmy Butler, and Rajon Rondo trying to lead our team to the postseason. And granted, we were a scrappy team that really did make some real noise, but it just didn't feel like a team that was real. It felt like a 2K team that was too late. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of, we make jokes about that old Lakers team that made it in the bubble. Well, the Bulls kind of did their own little rendition of that once upon a time as well. There's a lot of other things that are associated with Dwayne Wade in terms of health concerns and different things like that that really hampered the back end of his career, which would also make the argument that there's a world where Dwayne Wade's prime isn't even as long as Jokic's in terms of being a hyper effective player over a long period of time. And that's something that I think also is really important when you factor in something like, where do you put Jokic in comparison to a guy like Wade, for example, where I think in a scary kind of way, thinking about the fact that Nikola Jokic is still relatively young, still relatively within the middle of his prime age-wise, Jokic might already be that dude.
100%, man. I mean, it just honestly, like, it just sounds crazy. And I think the reason, like, and he has so much more room to just add to that resume too. A lot of the reason why we can't even have him above the other guys is because of just longevity purposes. These guys were just so great for so long, and of course, it's easier to rank guys at the end of their career. Nikola Jokic is freaking 28 years old. This is just the beginning. It feels like for him, and his sort of game, like Jay mentioned, is just gonna age gracefully. He's not the most athletic. He's not the above the rim type of player that he's like, he could barely freaking get off the ground, for goodness sake. But his vision is still gonna be there for as long as we know. He's still gonna be 7 foot. He's still gonna be able to hit those Sombor shuffle like fadeaway jumpers. He's still gonna be able to rebound with the best of them, just because he just knows positioning and like how to just go for the boards. He's gonna just continue to grow. And we say top 25 all time. This guy might even finish like top 15, possibly top 10 to see where where, depending on where his career goes. But man, the conversation needs to be had. He deserves to be in this conversation. He deserves to be among the greats already in his young career. Before we move on to some Miami Heat talk, I'm going to throw this in really quick. We've done this or that with some players before. I'm going to give you some NBA legends, Jay. This might be a little
okay.
This might be a little bit tough. So if you need some like stats or some sort of accolades or anything, I got you. But I'm going to give you 3 players. Tell me if you got them or Jokic better all time. Isaiah Thomas.
Yoke.
Yoke all time.
Yeah.
Yeah, 12-time All-Star, 5-time. Yeah, I mean, people forget. Freaking Isaiah Thomas's career was kind of short. Yeah, he won 2 championships and he was the lead guy, but the injuries got to him, and like he just did not have the longevity that some of these other guys have. But he was still a fantastic player. Next player, John Stockton.
I definitely think Jokic is better than John Stockton.
That's fair. I mean, these are guys around our range, top 30, top 25 all time. So this might better contextualize for like not just us, but even for the viewers or like listeners, like where Yoke is like compared to some of these guys. Allen Iverson. I have a couple guys here too. Allen Iverson.
Dang. See, once you start factoring in impact, it gets dicey. But I feel like in terms of overall accomplishment, I still think it's Jokic.
Okay. I was gonna do just 2 more, but I have to add a third one here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Elgin Baylor.
I think this championship helps. I think this championship really helps. I think Elgin did a lot of stuff in his tenure, and that championship was the only thing that really sways him, where I feel like he's not in these conversations as much. And now Nikola Jokic has accomplished that. So I think Jokic over Elgin too.
Crazy. I mean, Jokic has been so crazy, man. It's just crazy how much this sort of championship, this sort of playoff run can really help out your all-time status.
Yeah.
Charles Barkley.
Oh, okay. That one's tough. That one's tough because I feel like, I think Jokic, in terms of him being as good as he's been, has probably been in the conversation for much longer than Charles Barkley has ever been in terms of being considered as the best player in the league. We're not talking about being considered the best player at your position.
Yeah.
That's one of those things where I think Charles Barkley has kind of had a perennial run where he probably had anywhere between 4 to 7 years where he was arguably at least top 3 at his own position.
Yeah.
But we're talking about a guy. Again, I think the championship is the thing that ends up putting him over the top. And a situation like that against a player like that, where you could say maybe accolades and things like that kind of meet in the middle. And then it's like, hey, but this guy led his team to a championship and did it in dang near dominant fashion.
Oh, wow. Crazy. Yeah. So Jokic over Barkley. Last but not least, that's a current player, Giannis Antetokounmpo.
I think I still got to keep Giannis over Jokic all time. Time. Now we're talking currently in the league. I think we both have this agreement that Nikola Jokic is the best player in the NBA. We've both been saying this since the beginning of the season for anybody that wants to go back and check the tape, first of all.
Yeah.
But in terms of all time, Nikola Jokic and Giannis Antetokounmpo both have finals MVPs and 2 league MVPs. Now, Giannis also has the DPOY, the Most Improved Player Award, and there's a couple of other things contextually with his finals run that I think will be viewed differently in NBA history. Now, that's the weird thing. These 2 NBA finals runs are both 2 of them that have been kind of considered as a little bit lighter in terms of their pathway to the finals. So it'll be interesting to see that's a good question to ask. Who do you believe had a much more renowned, more memorable road to the championship? Giannis Antetokounmpo or Nikola Jokic? I think that's an interesting conversation to have because they are 2 kind of controversial championships in terms of the pathway to winning it, right? Giannis and the Bucks with their situation with the Kevin Durant big toe, right? And then you have the opposite end with the Denver Nuggets where everybody points to the seeding and, injuries along the way to certain players, or the Lakers not necessarily having the level of continuity and talent outside of LeBron James and AD, all these different things, right? There's a whole lot of controversy around the road to the championship. So I think that's a great question in its own right is who do you think had the more memorable championship run, Giannis Antetokounmpo or Nikola Jokic? I think if the answer is Jokic, then I think that may outbalance
Yeah.
the MIP and the DPOY to a certain degree when you factor in how dominant Jokic was on his run. Now, granted, Giannis was very dominant on his run as
Yeah.
well, so I don't want to shortchange him, but I think that's what'll make things really interesting. But I'll give Giannis the heads up for now
Yeah.
because of the fact that I think accolades wise, obviously he still has a couple of notches ahead.
Yeah. I mean, his defense, I mean, both extremely memorable championship runs. I think we'll say that for sure. I would still, again, agree with you, Giannis a bit all the time, especially with the defensive impact that he's had, like, ever since he, like, became this superstar level player. I think puts him over the edge. But, man, if we're talking about longevity of their play, I think that Jokic could have a good chance at overtaking him, especially if his game translates as well as we think it is over the next decade or so. So that's gonna be definitely a race to see who's gonna end up as a better player all time between these two. But man, it's definitely gonna be it's definitely a conversation to have. So if you guys have any thoughts on these sort of this or that all time edition with Nikola Jokic, let us know down below in the comment section. Jay, let's talk about this Miami Heat team, and specifically let's talk about Jimmy Butler because yes, I'm not gonna try to take away anything from Jimmy. He was the main reason why the Miami Heat were in this position in the first place. But watching this entire NBA Finals and seeing the way that Jimmy Butler was just how would I say he just was just too passive. He wasn't as aggressive as he was in previous series. It just was a different type of Jimmy Butler. And as much as like he was the reason why he was there, like they're the reason why he was the reason why the Miami Heat were there in the first place.
Mhm.
He didn't show up. 21 points per game, 6 assists, 4 rebounds, the 41% from the field, 36% from three. Jay, does Jimmy Butler deserve a good portion of the blame for the Miami Heat's performance this NBA Finals?
Yeah, I think he does. I mean, I think if you're gonna do a good portion of the blame, the way I view it is like a 55-45 split type deal
Yeah,
in favor of Jimmy Butler being the 55. And the reason why is because at the end of the day, the star player gets most of the blame. The star player is going to be the one that has to shoulder it. That's how it's always been, and that's how it's going to continue to be because you're the guy that up until this point elevated this team to this level. Granted, there was a handful of role players. We're going to get to them in a second. There's a handful of role players playing out of their mind. I think maybe a handful of them might have even seen a check at the end of the door, at the end of the tunnel. And that might be a part of the reason why they were balling out was because they understood that a strong finals run would really put them in position to secure a bag this summer with the pending free agency. But Jimmy Butler, at the end of the day, is the tone setter and culture establisher for this kind of Miami Heat team. And what he does empowers everybody else. TV. There is no reason in the world where in the NBA Finals we can say that the best player, in order, the most effective players for the Miami Heat started with Bam Adebayo, Kyle Lowry, and then Jimmy Butler in terms of overall effectiveness throughout the entirety of the series. I understand. I'll say Kyle Lowry, and the stats might not indicate, but on a night to night basis, in terms of consistency, you can make an argument that the top three players in order was Bam Adebayo, who was hyperly aggressive but very inefficient. But then you have Kyle Lowry, who was not very aggressive, but was very efficient in when he was not only getting his baskets, but how he was getting his baskets. And then Jimmy Butler, who although had 21 points per game, like you mentioned beforehand, it's probably the quietest 21 points per game from a superstar player in an NBA Finals that we've seen in quite a long time. So, yes, Jimmy Butler is going to have to shoulder a lot of the blame. This is where we have to get to the role players, though. The Miami Heat turned into the Miami Heat team that we saw during the regular season. TV, this is why we didn't feel comfortable picking them in the earlier rounds. This is why, because we felt like it was only a matter of time that they would be due to revert back to the team that we've seen all year. This is the thing that loses everyone. It's so easy to say, oh, your team is not good in the regular season, but once it comes down to 16 game players, these guys are able to show up and make runs. But guess what? There's always going to be what's called a regression to the mean.
Yeah.
That means that for everything that we saw in 82 games and for everything that we saw throughout their run to the NBA Finals, there is a median there in which there is a true reality of what this team actually is. For the regular season, this was a middle of the pack team at best that was just trying to make it into the postseason. Throughout the postseason, this was a team that was playing with a chip on his shoulder and a handful of role players that were playing above their weight. And it unfortunately came due that they were going to meet somewhere in the middle where when they ran into a team that was talented and had enough heart as they do, all of that was going to culminate into, well, guess what? Now you're just back to being that middle of the pack team that just was trying to make it to the postseason. The Denver Nuggets were able to humble them in a real way because they were able to match their energy, something that I would argue the other teams in the past rounds before the finals were not able to do. And for the Celtics, I would argue they did it little too late in
Yeah.
their circumstance. So I think the biggest thing for it is, yes, Jimmy harbors a lot of the blame, but the reality is this team was only but so good the entire time. And I think the guys on their team, and this is not me being facetious or trying to 2020 hindsight. I've been saying this throughout the postseason. These guys were playing above their weight class the entire postseason, which means that if reality strikes, they were going to come back to the middle of the pack at some point. Their timing just wasn't good.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm gonna talk. Let's talk about. I'm gonna talk about Miami Heat before I go to Jimmy Butler. This Miami Heat team was a lot of it. A lot of their success came from the role players being what they were. Caleb Martin becoming the runner-up Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Duncan Robinson dusting himself off, coming from the shadows, playing as well as he did in the previous rounds. Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, all performing some of their best basketball in the playoffs. They just didn't have it in these playoffs, and it's not due to them and it's nothing against like their player, their character, or anything. It's just they came up against a team which forced them to do things differently, like made things a lot more uncomfortable for them, and just came up against a team who was more disciplined and just playing out better. That's just what it really comes down to. There's a reason why half of this team is undrafted. There's a reason why half of the rotation is undrafted for a reason. These guys had to scratch and claw their way into the league, scratch their way and claw their way throughout the NBA playoffs. This was the character of the team, and when they could have taken advantage of the other team's lackadaisical play, that's when they were able to strike. When you face a team where they're not going to beat themselves, where they weren't going to dominate the fourth quarter because that was like their big calling card in the first three series of the playoffs. It was going to be a tough mountain to climb. That's just what it really is against this Denver Nuggets team. And when the role players can't hit their shots, especially the threes, apart from game 2, it was just going to be a tough battle to climb with just Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo leading your way, especially when Jimmy Butler was not as aggressive. Let me get to Jimmy Butler now, though. And this is and I think this is like a big effect on the role players as well. What Jimmy Butler did in the first 3 series of this playoffs is his confidence, his defensive effort, his offensive aggression trickled down to the rest of the role players. We talk about this with some of some of the top teams in the league. They take the character of their star player. When you look at the Denver Nuggets, every time they won a game, they talked about how, it doesn't matter. It only matters until we get to the end of the series. That was the whole narrative with them getting through each of these games, each of these series that they face. Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat all the way to the finals was every time they won a game, there's 6 left. We got 5 left. We got 7 left. All that type of stuff. That was their whole mentality. And when you have a confident Jimmy Butler, a engaged Jimmy Butler on both ends of the floor, that sort of confidence and effort just trickles down to the rest of your roster. And when Jimmy's not aggressive, and I know I've seen a lot of memes on Instagram and like TikTok over the last few games of Jimmy Butler just constantly just passing out to anyone and just not wanting to score, then the other guys are like, "What's going on? Like what? Like why aren't you like being that guy? You can make the argument for the ankle all you want, but at the end of the day, you're that star player. You're the one. You're the reason why they got there in the first place. You have a certain responsibility, a certain expectation to take them further in order for them to win, not just some like second round series. This is the NBA Finals we're talking about. And to be honest, Jimmy Butler kind of shrunk. We were talking about him before the series as freaking Michael Jordan Jr. He was nowhere close to that in this series, whether it's the efficiency, whether it's just the aggression. He deserves a good chunk of the blame just because his demeanor, his whole play just has such an effect on the rest of the roster. And you know what? Like you mentioned, shout out to Bam for being aggressive all series. Sure, the efficiency wasn't there, but he was still attacking Jokic any way possible. Kyle Lowry making all the hustle plays, taking the shots when it was there. But Jimmy Butler, man, we called you Jimmy Butler, we called you Jimmy Buckets. We saw a lot left of that in these NBA Finals, and whether it's due to fatigue or injury, it's no excuse. Everyone has some sort of injury going into these finals, going through this grueling NBA playoffs. You got to play through it better, and he just didn't.
Yeah, I think just to piggyback off, and I don't have a ton more to add just because I feel like we both covered it pretty well, but the effectiveness of Jimmy Butler is just so important to this team because he is what instills the confidence in this kind of squad. Like you mentioned beforehand, all the undrafted players and all that stuff. And I hate to keep beating that drum because the Miami Heat made it clear that they don't want to continue to beat the drum of that narrative of, hey, we're good for a bunch of undrafted guys. These are some really talented guys that played up to their potential in a run that was big time. I mean, they made history, right? First time an 8th seed has made the NBA Finals in nearly 20 in nearly 20 years or over 20 years, excuse me. So, I mean, this is a big time run by players that when they played up to their capability were able to really prove why they are in this league. These are also guys like I mentioned beforehand that that played themselves into some serious paydays. Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Caleb Martin. These are guys that I think are going to get a really heavy look on the open market in a free agency class where there's not a ton of big names after Kyrie Irving and James Harden, right? After those two guys, the pool is not light, but now it comes down to who do you like? Who fits on your team? What's a concept that your team is going for? How does this guy embody what your team is trying to transition into? That's where the rest of these free agents fall into because it's not a handful of big name guys that are going to change life for your team, but there's a handful of guys like these Miami Heat dudes who play hard, bring real skill set to your roster, and could make some teams a lot better than they are, despite the fact that they're not bringing star power with them. So for Jimmy Butler to know that, understand that, and really see the circumstances of the fact that this team might not be the same next year because of this factor, gotta read the room, buddy. Like, you gotta read the room a little bit and understand that yes, these dudes have been a big part of how you've gotten this far, but at the end of the day, man, you do win the championship off the back of your star. You just do.
Yeah, 100%. And Jimmy Butler just did not play to his capabilities, and he'll be the first one to tell you that he did not play up to his capabilities, as he said after the NBA Finals. They just didn't win, and he'll always take the blame for that. He's a great team player, but he just could not get it done in the NBA Finals. Shout out to Miami Heat. They had a very, very successful regular season, being the first playing team to make it to the finals, first 8 seed in like how many years. Let's not take away from an amazing season they had. They were absolutely phenomenal, and we gave them their flowers a lot, especially throughout the Eastern Conference Finals going into this season, to this NBA Finals. They just couldn't get it done, and they get defeated in 5. But let's talk about what's next for Miami Heat. I mean, you talked about it. Caleb Martin, Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, all guys who outperformed in this NBA playoff run, who are going to be due for big contracts, especially like of what they were able to deliver on the biggest stage. Jay, if you're the Miami Heat, would you try and run it back with this roster? Or, as reports suggested today, they're in the market for another superstar to add to this team. Damian Lillard, I've seen too many edits of that today. Jay, should they run it back, try and like beat to win a championship with this team, or should they pull off a Pat Riley special and try and get some big time like star or superstar via trade?
I mean, the Pat Riley special for the superstar sounds like this team. I do feel like this is one of those teams that's kind of what they're missing. Like I feel like Jimmy Butler is very good as an all-star caliber player, but I feel like matchups with the parity in the NBA now, the NBA playoffs are going to be matchup dependent. I think we saw that in the Denver Nuggets run and how, although the fact that I think they were as dominant as they were, their team was formulated in a way where they didn't run into too many superstar caliber guards that would kill you in the pick and roll. Granted, they played against the Phoenix Suns, but that was a Phoenix Suns team that relies heavily on mid-range offense as opposed to three-point shooting offense the way a Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors did a season ago, right, against
Yeah,
the same Denver Nuggets team. Now, something that has to be considered is that the Miami Heat don't have a ton of cap space. That's one of the biggest things that really hurts them. They do have a handful of guys that they have to make decisions on in terms of having cap holds. Kevin Love, who they traded for, obviously Udonis Haslem is somebody that's going to be retiring after this season, but he's a he's a big locker room presence. I don't know if him retiring in any way um leads the front office to maybe view that as a maybe a good time for a changing of the guard in terms of their mentality. Um, but I mentioned it beforehand. Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, they actually still do have Caleb Martin on the roster in terms of what it is for next season for $6.8 million. So hey, they've got him for a pretty fair
yeah,
pricing for that one. But he's going to be a guy that people are going to be calling up about
yeah.
after the way this after the way this season went. So it's like, you know, it's one of those things where they're in a position where they gonna have to make a real decision on a handful of guys. Like, I don't know if they're gonna be able to run it back. So I think the biggest thing is for them to maybe look for a big fish.
Yeah, I think I feel the same way. I think again with this playoff run that just happened and like the guys that they have ready up for contract, I think they're gonna like ask for a bit more than what they're gonna be than what the Miami Heat are willing to pay. I mean, it's one of those things. Sure, they look great when they're getting paid like $1 to $2 million. When you get 10 mil plus that you're giving to Gabe Vincent, to a Max Strus, that's when it becomes kind of iffy. I mean, it's the same idea with the Lakers and Austin Reeves. He looks great right now on a 1 million, $2 million contract. What happens when you give him 20 million? It's a whole other story. Like, it's a whole different story. And I think with the way Pat Riley is and the way that Jimmy Butler's prime, I feel like is gonna become like the window's gonna be closing more and more. Potentially getting someone like Damian Lillard would be an absolute game changer for Miami. I think that this coaching staff and the scouting crew is good enough to like fill out those other spots just because they've done it for years at this point, trying to find like these like guys that no one has really heard of, bring them to the roster and like really turn them into like viable role players. But if I don't know if there's going to be a way because I don't think they have much draft capital at all as well.
Mhm.
But if they can somehow, some way bring in a Damian Lillard, bring in potentially, I know maybe this guy's not as favorable as he was in previous years, a Bradley Beal, someone like sort of along those lines, a disgruntled superstar, then that can really keep them in the mix. I just don't think that like, with the way that this magical season has gone, it's just something this just can't be replicated. So I think that going for the next superstar, going for the next disgruntled star would be the best move for the Miami Heat as well. Any other thoughts moving forward?
No, man, Miami's in a tough spot. They got to go back to the drawing board. This is their second finals in 4 years, but it's also their second finals loss. They're clearly doing something right in
Yeah.
terms of being able to not just make the dance, but really put themselves in position to win the whole dang thing.
Yeah.
But they clearly are missing something that's required to get them over the hump. They've got to decide whatever that something is and attack it heavily this offseason. But you mentioned Jimmy Butler's prime. We just saw in this finals, Jimmy Butler clearly has the ability to turn it up when needed. But playing 40 plus minutes a night on a extensive postseason run like this one, where you are the lead guy that gets all the attention, it comes with a price. And although you can turn your levels up, there still is, there's still a point where that gas tank hits E if you don't have the rest of the supporting cast firing on all cylinders. Like we said beforehand, the Heat were able to ride the magical roller coaster of their role players locking in and carrying along with Jimmy Butler playing the way he was. But we saw the minute that the role players took even a dip back down to reality, Jimmy Butler was not able to uplift them. And that's something that your superstar player has to be able to do if you want to be a championship caliber team. So I don't know exactly what their issue is to put them over the hump, because they clearly have the ability to get themselves all the way to the cup.
Yeah.
So like I said, they're gonna have to reassess, reevaluate. But Jimmy Butler's timeline is the question.
Yeah, 100%.
Jimmy Butler's timeline is the biggest question of this offseason, because the question is, if this is still a team meant to build around him in the hopes of winning a championship, then you have to view it as you've only got a couple more seasons of, if that, of elite level Jimmy Butler basketball, which means if you're going to make your play, it better be soon.
Yeah, they got to do it this offseason. And I think knowing Pat Riley and knowing like that he wants to compete every single year, he'll make the right decisions, as he has done basically his entire tenure as the president of the Miami Heat. We've been able to trust Pat Riley all these years. I think that we should be able to trust him going into this offseason. But yeah, those are our thoughts on the NBA Finals, the Denver Nuggets, the Miami Heat. Let us know down below your thoughts on any of the topics we have discussed so far. Before we move on to the draft and the NBA quiz, we're going to get into some quick NBA news, because the Raptors have been in kind of the news lately, especially with the moves that they've made or the moves that one of their players made. Let's start off with the head coaching move. The Raptors hired a new head coach. It took them a while, but we finally got there. The Raptors hire a former assistant coach of the Memphis Grizzlies, Darko Rajakovic. Rajakovic. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that right. He is the franchise coach's successor to Nick Nurse. I told you like earlier today. I have no idea who this guy is. All I know is that this guy had like a huge part in developing players in the Memphis Grizzlies system, such as Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson. So I guess that's a good sign. And he also like just wants to build a championship, like a winning team. Jay, any quick thoughts on this? I know it's hard to kind of judge an assistant coming into a new head coaching role.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point in terms of just it being a hard situation to judge. I think if you pair this with the Fred VanVleet news of him, I think it was declining a 22 point something, yeah. Well, yeah, $22.5 million player option in order to allow himself to become a free agent this summer. You pair those two things together, and I think it's easy to come to the conclusion to say maybe that the Toronto Raptors are looking to maybe hit the reset button. I don't necessarily know if I want to jump on that bandwagon just yet in terms of assuming that, because I think that the Toronto Raptors have a ton of guys who are really solid from a developmental standpoint, where if you can give them more opportunity to be effective within their roles that they can thrive within, this team might still be really good as a perennial playoff team as currently constructed, with a couple of different tweaks. I think retaining Jakob Poeltl is maybe the biggest thing they need to do this offseason, because I think he was just a super big pickup, especially with his synergy with a guy like Scotty Barnes, who is somebody who should be the golden ticket of this whole developmental stage of the Toronto Raptors. But again, two things that are kind of important. It sounds like Fred VanVleet may not return, and also another guy who may be on the open market is I believe, I'm
Gary
not
Trent Jr.?
entirely sure. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but it sounds like Gary Trent Jr. is not returning as well.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so either.
Yeah, so those are two big time. I don't want to say big, maybe big time's a stretch, but those are two
starters.
starting pieces in your backcourt,
Yeah.
mind you. And let's not sleep on Gary Trent, 3-point shooter, big time, a guy who's very competitive on the defensive end for them at the two guard spot. He's definitely played very well for them within that system. And don't forget, like coming out of coming out of that Portland Trailblazers trade, he really made a name for himself in this little mini stint he's had with the Toronto Raptors. So it kind of sucks to see him move on. I'm sure he's looking for a little bit more opportunity to be a little bit more featured on a team where maybe they have a little bit more of an understanding identity wise, especially on offense. Because I think on offense, Toronto is not necessarily sure what they want to do just yet. I think they got the blueprint of what they want in terms of having a bunch of 6'9" guys who can fly around and do what they need to do versatility wise defensively. But I don't think that Toronto has forged an offensive identity yet. That does affect guys like Gary Trent Jr., who was kind of forced to be more of an off-ball merchant most of this year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how they tackle the point guard market this offseason. It's going to be interesting to see how they attack the guard market this offseason while still trying to identify what kind of style they want to play.
Yeah.
But I don't know. The coaching hire, we maybe after we get the introductory press conference, we can get a better understanding of
It happened
exactly
this morning.
why him.
It happened this morning.
Well, I'm saying in terms of like being able to really get into the
Yeah.
weeds
Yeah.
of where he stands on the roster and different things like that. But aside from that, like, so of course that's something for me to
Yeah.
go watch after the pod's over. But aside from that, like you mentioned, it's not really a ton we can just deduce from it just yet.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, I'm gonna again combine the coaching talk and like the Fred VanVleet news as well. Fred VanVleet declining the 22.5 million player option as expected. He's probably looking for a contract like upwards of $25 million per year, which he's probably gonna get. So with him and Gary Trent gone, I mean, I feel like the Raptors are still like unsure of like which direction they want to go, if they want to rebuild, if they want to compete. It's always this like little like back and forth, like which way the Toronto Raptors want to go. And I don't want to be in a like as a fan, I don't want to be in a situation where we're like the Indiana Pacers of back in the day, the Orlando Magic, the current Portland Trailblazers, where you're just kind of treading water, just hoping to see if something's gonna click and just not picking a direction. I rather like pick a direction and just completely commit to that. And if that means with this guy is like a very good developmental coach, someone who can like really like try and like um elevate Scotty's game along with other guys such as Precious, some of the other young guys on the roster as well. Potentially, if they want to keep Siakam around, who knows? But at the end of the day, if he's going to be like that type of guy to develop these guys and try and like build a system from the ground up, sure, let's rebuild, let's do it. But at the end of the day, it's Masai Ujiri wants to compete. Bobby Webster always like wants to be in a position where they're in the mix for the playoffs. They gotta like they're gonna the moves this offseason is gonna really like, dictate whether like of course which way we're gonna go with this, especially with the loss of Gary Trent and Fred VanVleet. It's gonna be very interesting to see like what happens with them. So yeah, I just think that with this hire, sure, um, I think it'd be great for player development. I mean, he talked about it. He's like really like in a press conference today. I'm just looking at some of the quotes. They're talking about, oh, this guy has like international experience, like experience in the NBA. He's coached for different sports. He just has like a very smart mind. And look, I'm all cool with that. Try a new coach. I'm all good with that. But this screams to me, this is a time to restart. This feels like a time to restart, and I hope and knowing the Toronto Raptors and Masai Ujiri, that's probably not what they want to do. And they think like when the report came out that this hiring happened, they were still thinking, oh, this is a type of coaching hire where we could go in both directions. That we want to compete, we want to rebuild. Guys, pick one. Just pick one and let's just commit to it. I think this is gonna be really good for Scotty Barnes if he can like turn Jaren Jackson to the like all-star level player that he's been. I'm great. I'm excited to see what he's gonna be able to do when working with Scotty Barnes. I guess like I'm excited for the hire. It's always like, I mean, coming from a team which just hired Nick Nurse out of nowhere and he became one of the best coaches in the league. I trust in the ability of this guy and like with the tens of candidates that the Raptors interviewed, which I've been following throughout this entire process with guys with like Frank Vogel, Steve Nash, many others in the mix. If they believe in this guy, I believe in him too. So happy with that. In terms of Fred VanVleet, We should have traded him at the deadline, man. We really should have traded him at the deadline. Now we're getting absolutely nothing. Oh, Raptors deluded in the fact that we could still compete with this roster. That is hilarious. But yeah, that's my thoughts as a Raptor fan. I just hope that we just end up picking a direction this offseason for sure. Jay, let us move on to the next topic of the show, and it's the two staples of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast. We are going to be doing the draft and as well as the NBA quiz, but of course we're starting off with the draft. And Jay, this is going to be a fun draft, man. This is going to be an absolutely fun one because our job as two GMs is to try and draft a team that is able to defeat this Denver Nuggets team, this NBA champion Denver Nuggets team. And now we have some parameters, of course. If we just draft like all the players in the league, I mean, we're just going to absolutely just draft after absolute super teams, and it's just not going to be fair. No. We are going to make a roster which kind of mimics the Denver Nuggets roster and how they were built. One generational superstar, so it means like your choice of anyone in the league. That's going to be the first round. The next 2 rounds, we have to pick 2 guys under 25 years of age. But the catch is they can't have an all-star selection, but there's still a ton of talented guys that we could choose from. Then we have to pick 2 role players that could be starters in the league. They can be starters, but they can't be, the all-star level players. So they can't have made the all-star team, but they can be considered like ultra role players, a la Aaron Gordon, KCP, those type of guys. And 1 6 man, anyone in the league that has come off the bench. Again, if like for example, someone like actually no, all players off the bench can count, just to make it a lot like less complicated. We're gonna have that as well. Jay, what are your thoughts on this draft? Are you excited?
Yeah, man, when you sent me this idea, I was really excited about it. I think the most interesting part is actually that 2 under 25-year-olds thing, because the no all-star selections caveat is kind of important, because if you look across the league, I was going through a bunch of the teams before we hopped on the podcast. There's a lot of teams that have at least a one-time all-star on them.
Yeah.
And then when you go through that list, specifically with this past season, there's a lot of teams that have a lot of first-time all-stars that fall under that under 25 category. So even if they're a guy that is under 25 years old that you think has all-star level upside, there's a reality where either this season or maybe even last season with a guy like Darius Garland, they've already made an all-star game, which takes them off the list.
Yeah, 100%. And I think this is going to be a very fun draft. We're going to build some really nice teams. I'm excited to see how these teams ultimately shape up. But as we do, we're going to do serpentine draft. So which means Jay gets the first pick, I get the next 2, and all that good stuff. So Jay, with the number 1 pick, the first pick has to be a generational superstar, man. Who do you got?
Dang, no pressure, man. But look, I know the NBA playoffs didn't end well for this guy, but at the end of the day, when we talk about building a roster, this is still a guy that I think can be a serious 1A with his two-way ability. I'm taking Jason Tatum with the first overall pick.
I like that. Jason Tatum with the first overall pick.
Yeah.
Very, very nice. Look, you picked someone who had a pretty rough end to the playoffs. I'm picking a guy who didn't even make the playoffs this year, bro. We're going to go from one European all-timer to a potentially another European all-timer. Let me go to it's a guards league, man. It's a guards league. I got to go with this guy. Let my generational superstar be Luka Doncic at my guard position. I'm very excited with that pickup. Oh, him leading the team. Now I get the first pick of the 2 under 25-year-olds. Huh. You know what? This guy's going to be a multiple-time All-Star. This guy just won Rookie of the Year. I'm going to have him as my ultra wing player going forward. Give me Paolo Banchero to be my second pick. Obviously, he's under 25 years old. He's like 20 years old. And this guy has potential to be one of the best forwards in the league. So give me Paolo at my second pick.
So, all right, so with that, I'm actually, I don't know if I want to pull that yet. I'm actually going to go to my first role player.
I was thinking that we're going to go just...
You want to do them in order?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to do them. Okay, if we're going to do them in order, then I'm going to go with the guy that is Paolo Banchero's teammate that I have extreme upside on, which is Franz Wagner. Franz Wagner is one of those guys, man, where I think that he's a super duper utility player. I think he's a guy you can put at the 1. He's a guy you can put at the 2, the 3. He has big time versatility on offense and defense. He can facilitate. He's a dude who played way above what Summer League made him look like his rookie year. And I think in his second year, he only got better. He's in a Orlando Magic system that is definitely geared towards being really good defensively. This is one of the 2 seasons back to back. The Orlando Magic finished in terms of defensive rating in the top 8 by the end of the year. That's
Yeah,
not by coincidence. They have big time wing play. Their biggest issue is the guard position. We're going to tackle that in this draft to see
yeah,
if we can maybe make his team a little bit more optimal with him in it.
yeah.
But Franz Wagner is definitely one of those guys that I think has a ton of upside. And although he plays next to Paulo Banchero, I think their meshing is going to make them one of the most interesting forward combos in the NBA in years to come.
Yeah. Awesome. So so you got Franz Wagner with your second pick of the draft. You have
Yeah.
another pick. You got another pick of the under 25s. Let's see who you got for that one.
So I just told you that we're going to address the guard position in a
Okay.
real way in terms of being able to optimize this roster. And the guy, although he doesn't help defensively in this regard, I think one thing that he helps in a big time way is being a real threat offensively. My second guy for the under 25 is going to be Anthony Simons.
Wow.
Listen to me. Although this might sound like a weird swing, this guy is a big time utility player. I think about the fact that he can operate big time in the pick and roll. He's a bit more athletic than your typical two guard, or at least from what he's typically compared to, I would say. He's not like Zach LaVine level bounce, but he's a guy that can get up there at 6'4", 6'5". He's a dude who definitely can shoot the lights out with the ball. He's a dude that, if you look at it, between his season with Damian Lillard and without Damian Lillard, he was still a 20-point per game scorer that still was about, 50, 40, 85
Yeah.
in terms of shooting split. So hyper efficient, whether he's playing with or without a ball dominant point guard next to him. That's a guy who you can plug and play in your system and not be afraid about his efficiency or his effectiveness dropping off. You put him next to a guy like Franz Wagner and Jason Tatum, you're also not worried about his defense on the perimeter either, which is big time for him because the Portland Trail Blazers are terrible on defense
Yeah.
because of the fact that they don't have big time wings. I keep using the word big time because this is going to be a very interesting team with a lot of flexibility. Big is going to be a huge theme for me in a way for these positions. Anthony Simons is going to be a guy where I think the big portion for him is his upside.
That's crazy. Honestly, I'm looking at some of the players in the league, not to mention some names, but Tyrese Maxey, Desmond Bain, Cade Cunningham. The fact you said Anthony Simons, I love the pick. I think he's going to be an excellent player. But interesting that you took him over those guys. I like it though. I do like that selection. But I got myself another under 25-year-old, and right now, you don't really have the defensive upside. Let me get the potential next Tim Duncan. Give me Evan Mobley to anchor my defense at the 4 position. Man, Paolo Banchero can play the 3 or the 4. I don't care. But, man, Evan Mobley, with his defensive upside, potential, offensive ability, shooting the ball, getting into the post, with Luka Doncic at the point of attack. Oh, this team's looking nice. Give me Evan Mobley with my second under 25-year-old selection. Now I got to get the first pick of the role player selection. And I like this. I mean, we're gonna be really loose with the role player role because there's gonna be some guys where we know that they're 100% not gonna be all stars, but they're still really good players. Like the Denver Nuggets, Aaron Gordon, he's a very good player, but he's probably not gonna be an all star in the future. But he's kind of that ultra role player. Same thing with Andrew Wiggins from last year, even though he didn't make an all star game. But let's be honest, that wasn't really something that was that one was really having that in their bingo card. Andrew Wiggins making an all star team, but with my first selection for the role players, and if you want, you can flag this. I'm willing to have a discussion about this. Give me Miles Turner.
Damn it.
Give me Miles Turner.
Oh,
look,
Team
Aaron
B.
Gordon Light. He puts up numbers in Indiana. He does. Same thing with Aaron Gordon when he was a member of the Orlando Magic. But Miles Turner, with the spacing, with the defensive effort, and with the big team I have already with Paolo and Evan Mobley, who can both rebound, I think he is the perfect center to add on this team. doesn't need the ball in his hands to be effective. He's just the ultimate roamer as well, with Evan Mobley being the switchable guy. Give me Miles Turner as one of my role player picks.
TV, that's so brutal. That was like literally the first role player I put on my list, dog. That's so brutal, bro. Like, I mean, that was literally the first guy that I put down. Like, oh, okay. Dang, that's a good strike though. That's a versatile guy. Gives you 17 and 9. Maybe not a crazy rebounder despite the 9 rebounds a game, but he's a big time. I mean, what's he, a 2-time shot block champion or
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that? He can shoot the 3. Like all the tools are there
yeah.
for him to be like a really really big time center.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's a good one, bro. That's a good one. Oh man. All right, so we got to pivot a little bit.
I hope you don't go with my other role player. I have someone in mind. I just hope that you just don't go for him.
So I guess the question whether or not this guy, I guess if you thought Miles Turner was going to get flagged, then there's potential that this guy could get flagged, because the real first dude that I wrote down before Miles Turner was Mikal Bridges. But I don't know if that's headhunting or not.
I think it's the same thing with Aaron Gordon. I mean, Aaron Gordon was basically like a number 1, number 2 option in Orlando for a good chunk of time. Sitting with, I'll allow it.
I feel as though Mikal Bridges is operating in reverse order of Aaron Gordon, if that makes any sense. I think now Mikal Bridges is being put in a position similar to Aaron Gordon, but again, similar to Aaron Gordon, I don't necessarily. I think that Mikal Bridges has huge upside, but I do wonder whether or not Mikal Bridges will jump into all-star status. Right, the wing position is pretty dang deep, and especially because the All-Star game operates more through forwards than they do necessarily small forward, power forward. The forward position leaves a lot to be desired. So that does leave a lot of gray area for a guy like Mikal Bridges. I think if what he did towards the back nine of the season is sustainable, then he could be in a real conversation for that. But I think the same arguments were made with a guy like that, like Aaron Gordon, who was a high flyer in his early runs with Orlando, where maybe he wasn't super elite, but he was a guy who could give you all-star caliber numbers. I think Mikal Bridges might operate on a similar wavelength, but he will never necessarily be considered as like the best guy on like a championship caliber team.
Yeah, best guy, probably not even the second best guy on the team, to be completely honest. Yeah. So I you know what? That we have two guys that are kind of walking the line. I'll accept that too. I'll accept that pick.
These are definitely two guys. And Miles Turner, you can make an argument, should have already made an all-star team.
Yeah.
You can make the argument that he's at least been a top 3 center in the league for half a year, at least once in his career so far. And I think Mikal Bridges really showed us something in the back half of the season with his run with Brooklyn. He kind of was already showing us a little bit in the beginning with Phoenix earlier on in the season, but Brooklyn was where he got to really blossom out. So there's also that.
Yeah.
And then my other role player is I'm picking another Orlando Magic. I really like Markelle Fultz. I really like Markelle Fultz at the goal. I really like him at the guard position. He's coming along really, really strong in terms of getting his 3 ball back. He's a dude who's competitive on the defensive end. He's a big body at 6'5". I believe he's like 6'4", 6'5", in terms of what he has. He's got a lot of length on him. He's got the build of a guy who could be a versatile two-way wing. He's a guy who can facilitate, can score the ball. He's competitive defensively. The 3 ball is coming. The free throws are coming along. Look, TV, if we're going off of name value, I don't necessarily know if my team is getting a bunch of upvotes in terms of being able to beat the Denver Nuggets. But if we're talking about what each of my players bring to the table, I think that there's a ton of versatility on this roster that allows them to go head up with the Nuggets. And I think the hardest part, which I think any team we make is going to have this tough question, is who guards Jokic? And so far, I'm kind of struggling with that. But, we'll get to it. We'll get to it eventually, I'm sure.
I like the Markelle Fultz pick, though. I do like the Markelle Fultz pick. I think that, like, given the right opportunity, and even on a winning team, I think he could provide like a very good role for a sort of team, and especially because now he's really improving his game. He's improving his 3-point shot. He can really be a valuable piece to a good team if he were to be given that opportunity. I get the last pick of the role players one, and I'm really trying to go like for like in terms of like the Denver Nuggets, because I
Okay.
got my young guys, I got my young stars, I got um my sort of Aaron Gordon type guy like equivalent at the center position at Miles Turner. For my guard, I'm gonna get someone who could be like a KCP type of guy, and he won a championship already. He's a member of your Chicago Bulls, all defensive member. Give me Alex Caruso.
It's a good pickup.
Alex Caruso next to Luka Doncic. He's shown all defensive potential. This guy can hit threes, as seen both on the Lakers and on the Bulls when asked to. And he's aggressive, man. He's gonna give you like effort 24/7. He's gonna be such a good like locker room guy, trying to like hype up the guys and everything. And his play is just gonna like translate to the other guys on the roster. You got some young guys in Paolo and Evan Mobley who maybe have yet to added that dog to their game and stuff like that. Alex Caruso could be kind of that vocal leader of the team, and I think that he could just perform on both sides of the court. So give me him as my next role player. I think that him and KCP have very, very much kind of similar roles, and they think they can have like very good, like very positive effects on championship level teams, as seen as both of them have already won a championship.
Yeah.
Next pick, I get the sixth man now. I got the sixth man, and I'm gonna go with someone who is kind of close to home, someone who I've seen play for many years as a member of my Toronto Raptors, and has shown that he can become a very effective six man for both the Trailblazers and the Clippers as well. Give me Norman Powell to come off my bench. An absolute bucket getter, can create his own shot, and he has shown that he has a little bit of a playmaking ability too. So give me Norman Powell to come off my bench.
I think that's really good. I think those are really good pickups. Alex Caruso was a real consideration for me from the six man position as well. So I think it was good that you were able to snag him up for role players. In terms of finishing things up, I think that I still need another role player and a six man, right?
No, he's have a six man left.
Okay. I thought I didn't get a five.
No,
Because I think I needed three role players. I got
no,
Mikal.
sorry. It was two. I put three because it's supposed to be like 5-man lineup and a 6-man. So.
Oh. Ooh, okay. So I gotta pick a. I don't have a center. I just realized that. Okay.
If you want to switch, if you want to switch it up and like you can like replace Fultz with like another like a big man if you want, and you can get a 6-man, you could do that as well. Because I think like I accidentally typed it in like this is again my fault for like pre-show type of thing. I realized in the DM I put like 3 role players. So
Oh, it's okay. Okay, so what I'll do is because Markel's come off the bench before, so that's fine.
You know what?
Markel's come off the bench pretty decently for this Magic team, too, because Cole Anthony was getting the start, and they have a pretty weird guard rotation. So I actually put Markel Fultz as my 6-man instead of Malik Monk, who was the guy I was going to originally take. And I think the guy I'll take at center just to try to hold up, I'm gonna grab Walker Kessler.
Oh, I like that. I like that selection. But this guy could definitely be like make a bunch of all NBA, like all defensive teams in the future too. So having him at the same position to be your anchor, I like that. Yeah. So we have both our teams ready. I have an idea of how it's going to set up, but do you want to go first with the way your roster setting, or you want me to go first?
I'm interested to see you go first, just because the Miles Turner anchor is really interesting at the center position. But I'm interested to see what you put around him.
Yeah. So at the lead guard position, of course, I got to go with the Slovenian, the Wonder Boy. Give me Luka Doncic at the 1, Alex Caruso running the 2, Paolo Banchero running the 3, a 6'10" small forward, a la Michael Porter Jr. There you go. Power forward, give me Evan Mobley. Gonna be that switchable guy, great defender, also has a great developing offensive game. And then Miles Turner at the center position with Norman Powell coming off the bench.
All right. And so for my team, I guess we got a pretty big body squad, like I mentioned beforehand, because actually I'm going to run Franz Wagner at the 1. I'm going to put Anthony Simons at the 2 guard position. We're going to put Mikal Bridges at the 3. Jason Tatum is going to play the 4 position. That's kind of natural for him interchanging between the 3 and the 4 as a part of the Celtics. And then at the 5, I'm going to put Walker Kessler with Markel Fultz coming off the bench as my 6-man.
Yeah. Oh man, these are 2 really good teams. Can these teams take down the Denver Nuggets? Who knows? Especially with the continuity and just star players that they have. I mean, freaking Jamal Murray is still probably the second best player compared to all of our teams, which is pretty good.
No, for real, that's cruddy.
That's crazy how he still hasn't made an All-Star team. That's nuts. Yeah. But yeah, That's correct. That's been a really good draft. Let us know down below which team has a better chance of being this year's championship winning Denver Nuggets. Jay, we have reached the final segment of the show, and I am bringing back a classic. Jay, I'm going to be giving you the guess the player by the teams that they played quiz again. I have 3 to 4 players. We'll see how much it goes depending on how long it is. I have 4 players at the ready. Maybe we'll do 3. And I'm going to be giving you their teams again, from least notable to most notable, and let's see if you're going to be able to get these correct or not. Jay, are you ready?
Really?
You had to, Jay has like in the past. Jay has either gone like this, like really quickly, really quickly, or he has taken a bit of a while. So this might be another one of those very interesting sort of quizzes. So let's go with the first player here, and the first team I'm going to give you for this man is the Houston Rockets.
Eric Gordon?
Not a bad guess, but no, Eric Gordon is not the player I am referring to. The next team I'm going to say is the Oklahoma City Thunder. Yes, the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Jeff Green?
No, but I do like that. I do like that guess, 100%. Next team I'm going to say the Miami Heat.
Holy cow. Let's go through the three teams again. Oklahoma City,
Houston Rockets, Miami Heat.
Victor Oladipo.
Yeah,
Right.
it is Victor Oladipo. Let's go.
Okay.
I was gonna give you this thing saying, remember the current team doesn't have to be like the first. It is not
Yeah. I was literally just telling myself that a second ago too.
Yeah, Victor Oladipo. Yeah, I went. Yeah, Houston Rockets, Oklahoma City Thunder, Miami Heat. Then I was gonna go with the team he was drafted to, the Orlando Magic, and then finally, of course, where he was at his best, the Indiana Pacers. Yeah, that was a really good run. 3 teams in, getting Victor Oladipo. That's really, really good. Let's move on to the next player. And for this guy, the first team I'm gonna say, I'm gonna go with, the Los Angeles Lakers.
So many guys I think you get. Flyer, Julius Randle.
No, it's not Julius Randle. Good guess. Next team I'm gonna say, the Denver Nuggets.
Is that KCP?
No, but again, this is another good guess. He was one of the guys I was considering for this game actually, but it's not KCP.
Okay.
Next up, the Brooklyn Nets.
Denver Nuggets, Brooklyn Nets. Okay, so it's not.
This is. It's just interesting journey this guy's had. Very interesting journey.
Yeah, no, I'm sitting here thinking like that the Lakers one is actually throwing me off because I was thinking of a handful of dudes, but I'm like, wait a minute. That's tough.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of Lakers. I'm trying to think the Lakers one is really throwing me off.
Yeah.
Nuggets Nets actually has way more connection than I thought it would, but
yeah,
Lakers in the mix of it is kind of weird.
The Lakers rotate through players like crazy too.
Yeah, that doesn't help either.
Yeah.
This is probably whack, but I'm gonna just say like Thomas Bryant, like on a flyer.
Not a bad guess, but it's not Thomas Bryant. The fourth team I'm gonna give you, the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks.
Dang, man, like I said, that Lakers team thing is like throwing me off bad. Holy cow.
He's played for a lot of teams. Very interesting. Again, the Lakers thing is definitely throwing you off, but there's a reason I have him as like the first team I said. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because like of course like the bailout is just to name somebody that's been like all over the place, like Ish Smith. Like
I wouldn't do you that dirty because like even like if I
yeah, like
from Ish Smith's career, it's gonna be tough to know which one's the
yeah,
most
yeah,
notable.
you know what I mean? Like you could have said Detroit Pistons and I would have been sitting there like, so what do you want me to do?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
what do you want me to do here?
Yeah.
Man, that one's brutal. Yeah, I'm not okay. Let's go back to the teams again. Can you just name them in order?
So Lakers,
Mm-hmm.
then we got the Denver Nuggets, the
Mm-hmm.
Brooklyn Nets, and the Dallas Mavericks. I'm gonna give you one more team after this one.
Um, let's just do the last team. Let's just go past because I'm not really sure.
The most notable team from this player is the Los Angeles Clippers.
Holy crap! Most notable player, Clippers.
He definitely had his best years here. I'm this guy has a pretty deep resume. I'm like sometimes forget like how good his resume is, but yeah.
Montrezl Harrell?
Nope. I will give you like another. I'll give you another guess. I'll give you another
That's
guess.
brutal.
You want me to give you the current team?
Yeah,
The
I
Denver.
won't cheat. I swear. He's on the Nuggets now.
I mean, that means he won an NBA championship.
What the heck?
Got
Nah.
some bird in Game 5 actually. He got some bird.
What the heck? Is it Bruce Brown? Is it really Bruce Brown?
No,
I'm not
nope.
tripping.
I have a feeling with the way your head's at, he might forget he's on the team. He's a center.
Oh
Yeah.
DeAndre Jordan.
It is DeAndre Jordan.
My God.
Yep.
I forgot he was a Laker. That's hilarious. That's actually hilarious, bro. Because I actually remember the Nets thing because KD and Kyrie are the only reason he got signed.
Yeah.
Him being a Denver Nugget was like literally the most hilarious thing in the world because it was like him and Thomas Bryant both basically weren't fitting on any other team. Thomas Bryant couldn't even get burned, and DeAndre Jordan basically didn't play until Game 5.
Yeah.
And friggin' bro, that's hilarious. I forgot he was ever on the Lakers.
Yeah, DeAndre Jordan. This guy's a pretty damn good resume. Now that he's an NBA champion, one-time All-Star, three-time All-NBA, two-time All-Defense, two-time rebounding leader. Not a bad career for DeAndre. 10 years with the Clippers as well. He was one of the during a time where the center position was freaking weak as hell.
Yeah.
He was pretty good. He was pretty good.
That's hilarious though, bro. Oh my God, I forgot that man was a Laker, dude.
Don't worry. If you gave me like I wouldn't have fixated on the Lakers because man, that was definitely forgettable for sure. That was very forgettable. Okay, let's go on to the next player. And the first team I'm going to give you for this guy is the Philadelphia 76ers.
PJ Tucker?
Nope. Second team I'm going to give you is the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Crap. Sixers, Thunder. Mm. Dang, what the heck? The Thunder have been like so young, so it's like
Yeah.
for so long too.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Jeremy Grant?
It is Jeremy Grant. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh
man. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, Philadelphia 76ers. He got drafted there.
Yeah.
Next, Oklahoma City Thunder. I was gonna go with the Trailblazers next. I was gonna.
Oh, if you said Trailblazers, I would have definitely got it. But I was just sitting there thinking, I'm like, like Oklahoma City is just too young to like start listing off dudes who either there now or have been there like super recently.
Yeah, so yeah, Jeremy Grant, I was gonna go with the Blazers next, and then the Denver Nuggets, and then the Detroit Pistons, where he got the bag and just started scoring bare points. Even though they weren't winning nothing. They were winning nothing, but he was scoring bare points. So yeah, Jeremy Grant, after two teams, that was really good. Nice. Very nice. Do we have time for one more for one more guy? Let's go with it.
Yeah, let's rock out one more.
Let's go. First team I'm gonna go with the Milwaukee Bucks.
I was about to name somebody random. Whoa, ain't
Okay,
no,
okay. Say
ain't,
the name. Say the name. I'm not gonna.
ain't. No, I'm not gonna go with that one. I will go with the backup guy I had because the initial dude I had was like, if you picked him, it would have been totally out of left field. I'll go with Brook Lopez.
Not Brooke Lopez.
Okay.
Just let me know. What was the other guy?
It was Wesley Matthews. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay.
I'm not gonna lie. I don't know why he was the first name that came up, but I was like, and for the last name, maybe it's like a super curveball. But I was like, that's a little bit of a reach.
It is, but you know, I don't mind. I don't mind. I don't mind the thinking. I don't mind the thinking. Next team I'm gonna say though is the Orlando Magic.
What the heck? Oh no.
The Orlando Magic. He, I don't think he was. I don't think he was that bad for this team. Yeah, he wasn't too bad. Milwaukee Bucks, Orlando Magic pipeline. It's a weird two teams kind of like.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of. I'm thinking they don't cross paths too often.
Yeah.
Um, and for the sake of this is the last name. I'll skip and go to the third team.
All right. The third team I'm gonna say is the Detroit Pistons.
Okay, now I am genuinely confused because I was literally just thinking Pistons, and I'm like, okay, but like this. Okay, wait a minute. Name the three teams again.
Bucks, Magic, Pistons.
What the heck?
I want to tell you this guy's award. It's actually pretty funny. I want to say, but I want to hear you. Let's see. So yeah, the Pistons was the last team.
He has awards.
No. He's no. I'm gonna tell you his accolades afterwards. It's just like it's just
Oh,
funny.
I don't know, dude. Uh, I don't know. I'm just gonna put the two teams. Well, nah, he's only been on two teams. Joe Ingles.
Not Joe Ingles. Not. I think he's played for like I don't know if he's played for enough teams, but yeah, he.
Yeah, I feel like I'm probably lowballing that one
Yeah.
too. But
All right. Next team I'm gonna say the fourth team, the Los Angeles Clippers. The Los Angeles Clippers.
okay, let's go through the teams again.
The Bucks, Magic, Pistons, Clippers.
Serge Ibaka.
Not a bad guess. He's played for three of those teams. God damn, yeah, that's not a bad guess. But yeah, no, it's not Serge Ibaka. The final team and his most notable team, the Philadelphia 76ers.
What the heck? Who is he on Philly currently?
Maybe.
Oh, that's brutal. What the heck? Okay, go through the teams one more time.
The Bucks, Magic, Pistons, Clippers, 76ers.
What in the world? That is a crazy run.
He's a solid player, but it's just like when I look at his when I look at his accolades, it's just funny to me.
What the heck? First of all, why are the Clippers getting so much love in this readout? That's the other thing. Like, what's on with the Clippers, man? I know they got money, but like, what's really going on?
Yeah, Clippers, and
Gosh,
I tell you, I'll confirm with you. He is a current member of the 76ers.
gosh. The Clippers made that whole thing like super weird because I'm like, who have the Clippers had? Like,
This
well,
guy almost played himself into an All-Star game on the Clippers.
really?
Yeah. He was in the conversations for a little bit.
Go one more time. Name the teams one more time.
The Milwaukee Bucks, the Orlando Magic, the Pistons, the Clippers, the 76ers.
I'm an idiot. It's Tobias. God damn it.
It's Tobias.
God damn
Harris. The only reason I'm laughing
it. Dang it.
I'm just laughing at his accolades because for the amount of money that he's been paid throughout his entire NBA career, he doesn't have a single NBA accolade on this Wikipedia page. He just has all like college and like high school stuff. Mr. New York basketball, first team parade All-American, McDonald's All-American, SEC All-Freshman, second team All-SEC. This guy has got paid probably over $200 million in his NBA.
Yeah, dude. Wow. The thing is, wow. I'm trying to think of what team tripped me up. If we look back at Tobias Harris, I would assume it was probably Detroit.
I was gonna say the Pistons I just remember the only reason I remember him on the Pistons so much is because in the trade that sent him to the Clippers, him and Boban came together.
Oh, well, duh, yeah.
He was there him and Boban like that. Like him and Boban really started their friendship over there in Detroit, and then they got moved together to the Clippers, and then it became a whole thing there. So
when was the Bucks though? When did that happen?
He got traded on draft night.
That's brutal. Those are the worst. Those are the parts of these games that I have to factor that in sometimes because I'm not gonna lie. Because Orlando sounded good, Detroit's kind of wonky. The Bucks, I don't think I would have gotten that part. And then obviously the Clippers, Sixers. Okay, boom, that makes sense. Yeah. Dang, jeez, Tobias, all that money just to be running around.
Tobias Harris over me? Tobias Harris over me? That's for you. That's for you, Jimmy. That's for you. But yeah, those are the 4 players. That was a pretty fun quiz. Let us know down below if there's any other players you want us to do, any other quizzes. We'll be taking suggestions down in the comment section or in the comments of any of our Instagram videos as well. But Jay, we've reached another fantastic episode. We've reached the end of the NBA season. Man. But yeah, this is another great episode. Jay, before we sign out, what do you have to tell these beautiful people?
Bro, I say it at the end of every single podcast, but this time is very special because now that the NBA season is actually over, me and TV get into the creative bag. It was cool following the news, getting into the nuances of the postseason, talking playoff basketball, and we love that we now have a new NBA champion. But this is me and TV's bread and butter right here, bro. The creativity that is about to be displayed over the next couple of months, you guys definitely going to want to tune in because we have a ton of stuff on the docket in terms of different things that we want to discuss, different things we want to try, rankings, tiers, free agency, the draft coming up. There's still a ton of stuff around the corner, even with the NBA season ending. The NBA cycle is forever, bro. So now that we have the freedom of working around more evergreen content that also gives us a lot of really interesting ideas to explore that we weren't able to during the fast pace that the NBA season runs with throughout 82 games and of course all the postseason. So stay tuned. If there was any time to subscribe to the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, it probably would be right now. I understand that the NBA season ended, but this is actually where me and TV really get started.
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of things coming up in the docket for you guys. There's a lot of creative episodes, creative things that we want to do. You know there's going to be some more crazy drafts, some more crazy quizzes as well. So you're going to be in store for that. And just look out. And of course, even if we're doing all this, we're still going to be covering some NBA content, daily NBA content on the Instagram, the TikToks, and all that stuff. Even if we won't talk about it on the podcast, you're for sure going to hear from us over on our TikTok and Instagram pages. Remember to follow us on that. Remember to check out our personal socials down in the description below. Remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, all that good stuff. And if you're listening on the podcast channel, just support your way in any way possible. But this is the end of today's episode. Thank you guys for watching and listening. This is TV. That's Jay over there. We are signing out. Have a fantastic day. Peace.